History interview of Ralph Casey, B Company, 43rd Tank Battalion, 12th Armored Division, taking the interview at the 65th Reunion, Washington, D.C., 4th of August, 2011. First off, Mr. Casey, I want to thank you for agreeing to sit with me and give an interview.
Thank you.
And we're just going to start at the very beginning. Before you joined the Army, what were you doing?
I was 16 years old, so I left school and joined the Army on August 7th, 1940, and went to Fort Knox, Kentucky, processed there, and was assigned to the 1st Armored Division in America, first one. It was a tanks also, small tanks in those days at Fort Knox, and I stayed there probably in February of 1941, and we were transferred as a cadre category to Pine Camp, New York. The camp has just been built, and we were going to form the 4th Armored Division. And we stayed there about a year. Anyhow, the 4th Armored Division went to Bastogne in World War II in big battles there with Patton. But I was with the 12th Armored Division south of Bastogne around Biche, France, Alsace-Lorraine, Haguenau, and I've left out something. Then after Fort Knox, Kentucky with the 8th Armored Division, we went on maneuvers, the whole division. Then we finally were put on board trains, and we went to Camp Barkley, Texas, and formed the 12th Armored Division. So I finally went overseas with the 12th Armored in the 43rd Tank Battalion in September 1944. And there was about 10 or 12 troop trains from this division to carry the 12,000 soldiers to Camp Shanks, New York. And there we boarded ships, and I think my ship was called the Marine Raven, whatever that means. And we went nonstop to Southampton, England, disembarked, and we spent about 5 weeks in England, and our equipment showed up from where and how, I don't know, tanks. Then we finally boarded LSTs at Southampton, and we took a trip across the English Channel to Le Havre, France, disembarked there at low tide, and we all got together in a formation convoy, and we drove 330 miles, I read somewhere in one of my books, to the action in Luneville, France, and we were within 30 miles of the front. And coming into Luneville, France one night, I saw in a distance, must have been 30, 40 miles away, I saw continuous flashing. That's where the real line was, the combat line. So I wondered, what did I get into here? So from there, we proceeded a few days later to Maginot Line. And we fought around there. And January the 16th, we crossed a big open field, which was called the Steinwall Woods, if you ever heard of it. And the Germans got 16 of our tanks that day, knocked them out in the open field. It was snowing, and they missed me. So the 17th, we got into Herlesheim, B Company, A Company, C, and D, I think. And the Germans were coming in town to retake the rest of Herlesheim. And I sat in my tank about all day. We weren't told to move or back up or go forward or whatever. And I was parked near a French cemetery. Behind me was 2 tanks in my platoon. 2 were ahead of me, and I was the 5th tank on the 3rd one. The first two got hit. I saw them get hit. And we were next. And someone told us to stop. So we must have backed up, I don't know, 30, 40 feet. Then that evening, about 5 o'clock, a German 68-ton Tiger tank decided to come down that street and go after us. So he came around the corner. I have the street number, but Rue Rybell. And he came around the corner. I saw the shiny right tracks wobbling in the snow. It was shining like a bulldozer truck, you know. And here come the barrel around, then here came the tank. So my loader was named Adan Cantu. He's dead now, he's passed on. So I said, throw a shell in there. We were all yelling above the throat mics. And he slammed one in there. I hit the solenoid button. I could see through my periscope, I guess you call it. And I hit him right on the front. AP, armor piercing, and went right up in the clouds, overcast, which could have been over 200 feet above the ground. It was an awful visibility day. So I hit him 6 times, I think it's 6 times, and I saw those red tracers hit the front of his tank, go right up in the clouds. And he didn't have time to fire at us, or that I wouldn't have been here. So there was a building, little home on fire on the right of my tank. His tank was down there, and this building decided to collapse. And all the smoke and rubble fell down and went right across and obscured our vision of each other's tanks. Then that's when we got out of the tank, and we ran inside the building. When it cleared up, then he put 188 right in our tank, but it was empty. I don't think he knew it at that time. Then we went in this building by the cemetery, and our instrument had captured about 13 German prisoners that morning. And that evening, when we came in the building there, German SS 10th Division, Panzer Division, Skull and Crossbone, they came in there with their guns. I was 20 years old then, with the other guys. Then he asked the Germans, did the Americans mistreat you or anything? He said, no, they were feeding us, and they were eating their lunch. He said, well, after you eat, you guys are relieved. You can go back to your outfit, continue fighting against us. And he says, you, and he pointed to me and the other Americans, and said, you fall outside because you're going to Hanover, Germany. So what can I say? So we were walking along before we got to the Rhine River, and some German, it was dark then, some German, that was on the French side still, he said, we will be in New York this spring. Boy, I was scared to death. I couldn't respond. I didn't dare to say something. Then we started marching towards the Rhine River, which is about a half a mile away from Herlesheim, France. And we're walking along. I don't know if I had my helmet on or not, but anyhow, the German guy was walking along with me. And the rest of us were in loose formation. And he says, he tapped my hand. I said, oh God, what's he want? I held my hands out. He wanted my gloves. So I said, he pulled them off. He said, put your hands in your taschen, your pockets, because it was cold. Then we walked and walked another 15 minutes, and he tapped me again. I said, God, what's he want now? He said, here, carry my Panzerfaust. It's pretty heavy, pretty powerful, pretty big. And some sergeant over here says, Casey, God, don't do anything stupid. Try to fire it, kill the guy, and he's right there. Well, they'd have cut us right down. Then after that, he retrieved his own Panzerfaust, and we continued to walk to the Rhine River, cross the Rhine River, on some kind of a ferry, would hold 4 automobiles, I think. No handrails or anything, guardrails. and we disembarked on the German side, and I saw horses pulling one horse pulling wagons of artillery to go and cross the Rhine and start their fighting in Heroldsheim, Offendorf, Hagenau, and so on. So we were put on boxcars, 40 and 8 boxcars. I guess you know, 40 is for what? 40 men or 8 horses. And I saw those signs on the boxcar. I said, what's this Ohms 40? That was in French. I guess they were French boxcars. So we traveled 3 days and nights to Hanover to our prison camp, which was called Stalag 11B. Then we had to bed down there and sleep in the floor that night. And so I found out some of the Russian prisoners must have been in the barracks next to us, but they must have been there since 1941. The war started June 22nd, 1941. And they were all a pile of bones, but still alive. So they managed to, some of the American guys took their boots off and went to sleep on the floor. And they stole their boots. They had to walk around barefooted with socks on until we were liberated. But I slept with my clothes on day and night. Not going to get my shoes. And we stayed there until April 26th. And the British Army, I heard them coming in their tanks. They had tanks called Cromwell tanks and Churchills, I think. But they came through the camp, and the German guards called us outside again and said, we want to wish you a good trip back to America. So they left, opened the gate, it was open. They left with their rifles. They kept walking, and I never saw them again. So the Russian prisoners started burning down buildings and crow's nests, yeah. And one Russian was on a motorcycle. He must have taken it away from that German soldier. And I saw him, he ate a whole can of concentrated coffee. What do you call it? He ate it with spoons. He didn't know what it was. He ate the whole thing. That must have been powerful. And they burned the towers down, and some of the barracks, then we got out and we were wild too, but we didn't destroy anything. We were looking for food in these buildings, which we found some. Then we were finally liberated April the 26th, and C-47 Skytrains came in, must have been a nearby grass field, and landed. We went aboard and they flew us to Namur, Belgium. Then we were in some kind of English barracks there, and they gave us the English uniforms. They deloused us first. Then we went on to Brussels, Belgium, I don't know, with trucks or what. Then they gave us, we had the Americans were there, and they gave us American uniforms there. We went on south to Camp Lucky Strike. You ever heard of it? Yeah. And we were in tents there, and man, we ate donuts all day. And we finally got on a ship and crossed the Atlantic. I think it was around May the 8th when the war was over. So I took all the food with me, you know. But I was skinny then. But I made up for it. And settled down in Camp Shanks, New York, and we were transferred to Camp Campbell, Kentucky in 1945. And I was discharged October 16th, 1945. And I came back home to West Virginia, settled down, and had a good life. So here I am.
Well, sir, I want to thank you for telling me your story.
Thank you.
And have it on video now, and we'll have it on the website for you soon.
Thank you very much.
Okay, rolling tape again.
And meanwhile, back in our barracks, we must have had 30 or 40 prisoners in this barrack. I call it a barracks, I don't know what it was there. And some of the soldiers had knives. I don't know how they got a hold of them. But they went up in the loft and was shaving wood down. to burn the fires to stay warm. And I was hoping that those 2x6s, wherever they had, didn't crack and crash. And we went up to a outhouse, what do you call it, latrine? And some Russian guy came up there, a prisoner. I didn't know him from anyone. And he must have been cold, because he approached me with a half a loaf of German sawdust bread. And he said he'd give me the bread if I'd take off my sweater, green army, olive drab sweater. And he put it on him because he was colder than I was. And I went back to this barracks and I crawled in my bunk. You've seen those bunks where the two men are in movies, two here, two here, two here. I went back there and crawled under that little short blanket. I ate that a whole half a loaf of bread and I was in heaven. I didn't want anybody else to see it because I might take it away from me. I was hungry. And let's see.
Can you tell me about the actual, I know enlisted men would oftentimes be made to do work, physical labor.
No, we didn't have, one day, they asked us for volunteers. We had to walk, I don't know, 2 or 3 miles. It was February, blue skies and below zero, and we had to pick up cordwood and carry it somewhere and stack it for the Germans, or maybe the German farmers. And we were cold too. And we would drift over by the fire and stop, and this German guard got mad. He said something in German, and he got mad and kicked the fire out. He must have said, "You damn guys don't want to work," or something. I don't know what he said in German. So we walked back about 3 or 4 miles back to the place. I was hoping to get extra food, but I guess they gave us extra piece of bread, sawdust bread. And what else? We had one light bulb in that room. That light bulb came on every night on account of air raids. One night it didn't. That must have been an overcast night and the American bombers couldn't get up. Only thing I know. And one particular day we were outside, but it was cold. And I saw one Messerschmitt 190. No, it's a Focke-Wulf. He was down just above the camp, about 100 feet above. Boy, he was going full bore back to somewhere, Germany, I guess. And 251 P-51 Mustangs was right on his tail. They went out of sight in seconds, so I didn't hear it fire, but I guess he shot him down. Then I looked up and I saw, God, it must have been 500 American B-17s and B-24s going somewhere on a raid, and I saw an orange shell come out of the German guns miles away up to a certain altitude to find at the altitude they were at. Then they started pounding them with anti-aircraft shells, and that was the end of that. And what else have I left out?
The windows were out in your...
Well, they had a toilet inside this building, but all the commodes were broken and busted. That commode's typical like our commodes, but either the cold weather froze them up, I don't know. The windows were blown out or knocked out, I don't know. So we had to go outside, for day and night for whatever reason. And there's no water, so we go outside to eat the snowballs, crunch them up, and that's all you can do. And they serve soup some evenings. And it was so bad, it was a warm soup, but it tastes so bad I couldn't eat it, so I just washed my face in it. I washed my face and it dried, and I was warm for a few seconds, and who cared? So that's about it. It's a long story.